Hello and welcome to the preview of the May issue of The Banker. I'm Joy Macknight, Managing Editor, and I'm joined by Silvia Pavoni, Economics Editor. This month's cover story covers the question that everyone is thinking about. What will the world look like after the COVID-19 crisis? Thanks so much for joining me today, Silvia.
Thank you, Joy.
So what are the implications of the protracted lockdown on the economy and therefore also on the banks?
So the big question is when we are going to be able to go back to some kind of normalcy. The International Monetary Fund, in its recent World Economic Outlook, does put out a series of scenarios. The baseline scenario says that we are going to stay in recession in 2020 and going back to economic growth globally in 2021. This is considered perhaps by some a bit of an optimistic scenario, because if we look at a situation in which we are going to still remain in lockdown on and off until at least the end of this year, and that there is going to be a second wave of contagion, which is something that other pieces of research do suggest, the global economy will remain in recession through to 2021. So this is certainly not something that is hopeful.
Okay, and then how is this impacting business models? And how do you think banks should be looking at corporate risk, in this situation?
So given that, of course, everyone's future depends on the economy starting to churn again, the situation is not particularly good for banks either, given that their clients, most of them are suffering. But what this particular situation is exposing is the fact that certain business models seem to be reacting better to the enforced social distancing. And of course, we are seeing cases of e-commerce actually picking up, particularly considering food supplies, while others that are mostly based on a sort of brick and mortar, and we can think about entertainment or even leisure and sort of exercise-based space, are suffering. And so banks may also need to rethink at the way that they look at corporate risk, and some of them, in fact, are taking measures to work through this crisis with their clients. So advising them on maybe also how to look at the best business model that could work for them after this emergency is over. Because, of course, we are facing a world that is said to be rather different from the one pre-COVID-19.
So how do you think things will look, post the COVID-19 crisis?
Yes, so I think one of the really the most evident situations that social distancing is likely to stay with us a little bit longer, and that has implications in terms of work. So most of us that are lucky enough to be able to work from home and have previously office-based jobs can function okay from home, given providing that the internet connection works, that you have the right equipment with you. But this also raises some issues in terms of habits. So speaking to a psychologist, she was saying that usually in psychology it is assumed that it takes 1 month for a habit to consolidate, and we are going to be in this for way longer than 1 month. So I wonder, and she wonders, how we are going to react once the lockdowns are widely lifted, and whether we are going to consider really going back to the previous way of life, commuting to work, spending quite a lot of time at work, and sitting closely with each other. So the open space and proximity to others, how that works. And speaking to a number of bankers, they also admit that should the situation stay as it is, with people working remotely becoming the norm, they will probably reconsider the need for teams working physically together as we have done in the past. And the chief economist of Natixis, in a research note, Patrick Artus, also says that he believes there are going to be long-lasting consequences in terms of travel, with a preference against travel. So, again, the ones of us who are lucky enough to be able to continue to do their jobs through video conferencing, perhaps, and anyway remotely, may discover that this is going to take a bigger chunk of our working lives after the emergency.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your insights, Sylvia. I think it's a very interesting cover story. You can get your May issue of The Banker online, the e-version of the magazine, at thebanker.com.